All right, guys. Last podcast, we kind of left off talking a little bit about identity and kind of how Supay fits with our personal identities. One of the overarching themes that we kind of realized was the differences in me and you, right?
Yeah.
To take things and rewind things all back to the source, the root of our existence. I don't know if you want to say it like that, but yeah, I guess our upbringings were very different. And it's definitely something that I think is really important when you're talking about your interests.
It's like what makes the brand and why sometimes we have a little bit of conflict, and
exactly,
what brings us back to the conflict. And maybe it's just beliefs, or maybe it's just how we were raised. And I think that's really important to talk about.
Yeah, how we were raised. Yeah. That's kind of like something that shouldn't be overlooked. And I think that it's important when you want to talk about where you're going. You have to always look at where you came from. I think to start that off, we probably want to talk about how we were raised. It's interesting because we were both adopted from the same country, in fact, but yet we were raised in two very different worlds, which can't be overlooked when you're talking about our interests, the way we think, the way we process.
The way we communicate together as a whole.
Exactly. So maybe you want to talk about a little bit about where you were raised and how that kind of got you to this moment in terms of your thinking and your thought process.
Yeah. I was born in Cusco, Peru. And that's what my birth certificate says. But I found out later on when I was visiting my family that I was actually born in Bumba. And it was just this whole family drama. But we can go through that another time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I always want to say taken. When I was taken to the United States, when I was brought to the United States, I went to...
Yeah, it's such a aggressive word.
I know.
Like taken. Yeah.
But isn't that kind of sometimes what it, like deep down, kind of feels like?
No,
little bit.
It's definitely like a word that, a lot of people... you just said that, right? Like, I was taken and you didn't even think about it. So it's like that word is, kind of in, there's definitely maybe a lot of people who were adopted, maybe not even understand like
how strong that word is.
Yeah.
And I think it's not, like, I get really hesitant when I say that. Not because of it's a strong word, but I feel like I'm offending somebody. Like I feel like I'm offending my mom and dad, in Minnesota. I feel like, we took you. That sounds so offensive, and I don't think, I'm not thinking of it that way. The reality of it is that, like, I was taken from one set of parents, and I was brought to United States, but brought is probably another word, a better word.
Yeah.
But it just feels like sometimes you're taken. And I guess as a baby, you didn't really have that option. So you kind of were,
I
taken.
Suppose.
But it just comes with all these like complications behind it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's I was brought to the United States with my mom and dad, and I think one of the main reasons I was adopted was because my mom couldn't have kids. And she did end up having like this miracle child, which is Michael, 4 years into my existence.
Your start in America.
Yeah, which is interesting to think even that too. But so Michael was born.
Yeah, it's wild to think like you're an immigrant. Like literally, like you're...
The definition, right?
Yeah, like you're zero gen. Like you're not even first generation, because first generation would be... If you had a child, that would be the first generation, right? Because the second generation would be their children's. I don't know. Maybe we'll look that up.
That stuff just always like complicates me.
Fact check us. So
yeah, maybe we should do that, like fact check at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I was brought to the United States with my mom and dad in Minneapolis, and Michael came, and it's just kind of funny. The first time I remember Michael was when we were in the hospital, and there's pictures of it, and he looked like an alien. He looked like E.T., and he's just like little shriveled up kind of guy. And I honestly don't really remember too much of, I guess, my childhood, as in that the beginning of like when Michael came in, and I had been, the only child for 4 years. I don't really necessarily remember that. I remember seeing pictures and things. But yeah, it was I'd say I had a pretty cool childhood.
For me, like, it's very different, right? When you talk about like childhood, like I have like so many like amazing like childhood memories up until like the very like when I was in a crib. Like I can remember like just standing up, just looking out, you know, in the dark when my mom was like sleeping, and when I was in my room, what do I do? Like, where am I? And I'm just, I don't know. I just remembered that, like, just little like glimpses of stuff. Like, definitely remember my mom like converted me to Judaism, and I remember being in the pool. Like, you know, I must have been like what, like a year or a little, maybe under. I had to fax my mom again, but yeah, I was very young though, so like that's interesting too. But
yeah, that I don't remember.
Yeah,
like I remember kind of like important things. Like I remember, you know, vacations and jumping in the pool.
I was gonna ask, like,
like
what would be like your first memory that you've ever had? Like,
honestly, like where my head shot, and it's kind of like,
yeah,
one of my first memories, and I think the one thing that stuck out with me was one of my teachers said, you know, go home and look at your parents and draw a picture of what you might look like.
Jesus.
That's one of my like earliest memories, honestly. I want to say first or third grade. And I just remember going home. It all relates, right?
Yeah.
I remember going home and just being like, I can't relate to you guys, you know, in that instance. And my mom had a safety deposit box.
Yeah.
And in that box was pictures of my birth parents.
Wow.
Which I was super fortunate to have, to be able to kind of put those pieces together. But I think as a kid, you know, it's so complicated. It's such a complex world, and I'm sure my parents didn't even really realize the things that were going through my head. But that was honestly one of my first childhood memories of just anything.
Wow. So was that like, would you say that was like kind of like the same day that you like realized your mom and dad didn't necessarily look like you, like didn't have the same complexion as you, per se?
I don't. Yeah,
or, like,
I think
was that
you know
even,
what's
like,
really
something-
interesting is like when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and people would see my parents and they'd be like, "Why are they white?" And I'd just be like, "That's my mom, that's my dad." You know, like I didn't think
That's
anything of it. I
so
was so like
interesting.
oblivious. I was just a kid. I was just like, "That's my mom, that's my dad." Like I love them. And then you know, there was when after I told somebody, "Hey, like I was adopted," they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, so your other mom, she didn't want you? She just gave you away?" And I think honestly that was a tipping point where I was just like, wait, what? Like, what? You know, like you're just like this little kid, you're innocent, you're just hanging out, and then somebody just drops this bomb on you. And then growing up, like that's kind of what you're constantly hearing is, why didn't they want you? Why didn't she keep you? And you're kind of like, shit, why didn't she keep me? And I think that's like such a deep question that you're kind of constantly battling. And those were some of my, I guess, deeper childhood memories that like really resonated with me, because it's kind of what brings me here, and you know, constantly searching for those meanings. And even after finding those meanings, you know, why I was given up, you know, why I was blessed to have a better life, you know. And I think I'm still searching, you know, for the meaning. I'm still that third
Isn't
grader.
that interesting,
you know?
too? Like how, like, you know, for you, like, you know, I know a little bit about some background on, you know, your history. So I know you reconnect with your birth family, but it's, you know, it's just interesting in the fact where, you know, you kind of have a lot of answers, but yet you still, like, I don't know, maybe you still feel like there's kind of like something like unanswered, even though like maybe you were searching for like the answer within the answer, but it ended up not necessarily being everything that you maybe had envisioned it being, and you're just trying to figure out like what that means. I don't know, it's just very interesting, like definitely different from me, whereas like I wasn't as fortunate in terms of meeting my mom, and specifically and my father, because well, my mom had passed away, but also my dad, honestly, I couldn't even give you a real answer like where my dad is. I think the only thing I could think that somebody had said at the time when I met when I met my sister, you know, years later after I was, you know, went back to Peru, which is, I don't know, just so many things to talk about. But yeah, it's just different. It's different. And I just,
especially like your upbringing too, you know, to
Yeah.
kind of lead you to that moment.
well, yeah, I guess, with my upbringing was a lot different from yours. In fact, I guess getting into a little bit about my history, I was born in Ica, Peru. Like you, my family wasn't from Ica. They were from another place. I have a lot more missing pieces than you, but I will try and explain to the best of my knowledge. I was born in Ica, Peru, and I was adopted by my mom, single mom, no other siblings, no husband or partner. And I was brought to New York City, and that is where I spent my childhood, and that is where I currently reside. It was an interesting experience to kind of like chime in and talk a little bit about, like, I guess the first time I remember talking to my mom about why she's white and I'm not. I think it was interesting. She was just coming out from her room, and I had asked her a question like, why are you not brown like me? And she said,
had she previously talked to you about adoption?
yes, but I don't know if it really clicked inside me. I think, or maybe that was the first time that she really decided to like explain to me, it's because, you know, you're not, I didn't give birth to you, but you're still my son.
What led you to that question?
I don't know. That's a very interesting question. I guess when you're a kid, you just speak whatever's in your mind. For whatever reason, I think I was just, you know, thinking about that prior to her walking in, and I just thought I'd ask. She, you know, she tried to the best of her knowledge to just explain, like, I didn't give birth to you, but, you know, you're my son. And I'd be like, you know, I think I remember saying, like, where did I come from? And she kind of told me was adopted. And I don't, and then after that moment, it kind of went blurry. Like, I think there was like, you know, I'd left it alone for a long time. And what's interesting too is like, I don't remember one person asking me growing up, like, why is your mom white and why are you brown?
And I feel like there's such a big, I mean, New York City is a melting pot, you know. Yeah. There's so many different colors and cultures, and I think, you know, that's probably one of the reasons, you know. And maybe it's more acceptable that, like, you know, people hadn't seen your dad, so they're like, maybe he's darker. That's
another good point. I didn't even realize that. You know, maybe somebody thought, it's probably the dad. He's just like OD Hispanic, like, and he's just like a mix. Because it's interesting, because like, if you, I don't know, for some weird reason, if you look at me and my mom, we somehow, like, I don't know, like, some people are like, yo, like, that's
your mom.
son.
And they don't. But I think just like, I don't know, this is a little bit of sidetracking, is I think just like I know you guys both super well, so it's just like mannerisms too. Like, it could be honestly the way you stand. It is like the way you look. This is also a side note. You know, like when you look at a dog and like they look like their owner. You start to become your owner.
Yeah. I was honestly thinking like that too. I just like just molded into her like being.
Which is like honestly the most beautiful thing, because it's not like, I mean, obviously we rebelled in so many moments, but at the end of the day, and like, we look at each other now and we're adults and we can say, you know, I am this way, whether I like it or not, sometimes from my parents. And you can say that about your mom. You know,
like for me, like, I know like your mom and dad, and I can definitely like see the comparisons in terms of the traits and the characteristics that you take from your mom and maybe like via your dad. We have very different upbringings, and it's just wild that how similar our roots were, but how yet we're different from, you know, growing up in two different parts of this country.
Yeah, and I think just kind of merging together as a whole, especially for Supay, it's kind of like we have two seriously different perspectives on things. And I think that even, you know, that leads into everything, you know, opinions, that it leads into why I want to do things a certain way, why you want to do things a certain way. And I think it's really important to kind of see where we came from, like a little glimpse into it.
Yeah. Trying to like pinpoint, why is it that you want things so detailed, and you want things so
honest?
Yeah.
Like 100%.
And it's not like I don't want it though. Right? It's just, I don't know what it's like. I want it to be, I want people to like it. I want it to be wanted, I guess. So it's like, I don't know, like, I'm just
as far as like designs and stuff.
Yeah.
I think,
like, would it be bad to say that would it be bad to say that I would potentially like alter like a design based on like what I think somebody else would want, rather than stick to what I know,
what's realistic
or accurate, or you know, like in that sense? Because I
don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's what you want. And there's just differences between kind of what you want or what I want. And I think as far as designs, I think we kind of came into a little bit of conflict for our first round of designs. And I think, I found a glyph and I created it based on my research of like architecture and culture and everything. Yeah. And only to find out later on that glyph was actually represented from a symbol that, the conquistadors coming over and kind of rolling up like the civilization.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was they made this symbol because they wanted to convert, religion. And when I found that out, I was designing the glyph based on this symbol. And so I was just like, oh my God, like I had no idea. It wasn't maybe true to their culture. And so for me, I was just like, stop the presses. We're not doing this. This can't come out. And you're like, wait, but everything is done. I was like, we can't do this. And you're like, nobody's gonna, what if people don't know? Like, it looks really great. And I'm over here saying like, it's not, I can't have my name behind that. I can't have somebody like call me out for that later because I didn't do enough research.
Yeah.
Whether or not we were ready to go or not.
And that's interesting too, because it's not that I didn't agree with you. I didn't believe like that should be, corrected. But I was just like, under the pretenses like too, which is just like kind of like the brand. It's like the brand isn't necessarily like so finited in terms of like the history itself, but it's more of like one's kind of, it is whatever you want to make it.
I think you summed it up perfectly as you're saying, like it's not necessarily based on these like hard facts, right? Because where did they get the facts? And you're back tracing, there's only so far that you can go back. I think it's really based on the overall feeling of what you want it to be. Yes, you have this set of facts, but what does it mean to you?
Kind of like repurposing like a meaning of a symbol to a certain extent, take that with a grain of salt. Like don't want to get too political here. reclaiming like I was taking a English class, I remember, and they were talking about like reclaiming certain words and reclaiming like the African American community, the word that they use. It's like at one point it was viewed as a negative thing, but today if you were to ask, and as somebody, an African American, I feel like they don't use that word as a bad thing. It's more of just a cultural thing. But I guess that's just one example of just.
But that's also like one example of like what one person might use it as, where another person thinks it, which is this whole entire thing completely, right? Is like you might look at this and take this from it, but I look at this and take that from it. And I think like that's kind of.
Which is interesting too, because I guess then both our opinions necessarily aren't they're just different. Like like you, it bothers you, but me, it doesn't bother me. But yet it's interesting too, which is a great example that because we're both from the same kind of place, but yet why does that bother you, but it doesn't bother me?
Yeah, and I don't know exactly, why it does. It's not like you were raised any less honest. For me, it's just I want to make sure I get. What it is? Honestly, it's that. I'm constantly searching for myself and my roots and my being and why I'm here. And that's such a question that it's like this unsolved murder. And I'm trying to put all these pieces together to link up to that murder, to that fact. Why? And for me, it's very like a process, like a steps. This is what happened. This is why you are. And I think for me, that's kind of how I think. And for you, you're way more laid back than me. You're just kind of like, it is like what it is because it is. But you always have practical facts behind that. But for me, I'm just like, no, it's not is what it is. I need to know why.
That's interesting too, because I think we were talking about something like this a little like in terms of the fact is like, I want to make it how I want to make it, like even
and not really worry about anybody else.
Even if it's not analytically correct, I'm gonna create it to where it is, and because that's like because I want the brand to be as successful as it can be, and I think that's it's not like I'm breaching the integrity of it. I'm just going with the flow. I'm going with what works in this moment, and if it doesn't work, okay, let's pivot. Let's go this way, because I think I can loop it in. Like for instance, like it's interesting too. We were talking about I was talking to you earlier about like Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder and how he did Batman v Superman. It didn't do well, and he was in the middle of the Justice League, and he got kicked off. And it was just an example of a studio, Warner Brothers, Scott and Josh Sweden. Sorry, don't mean for it to be too complex. Try to keep it very simple. But I guess the fact is that currently right now they are trying to make this whole continuity work. And sometimes, you know, they couldn't predict whether something did good or bad, but they're trying to maneuver themselves in a way where the whole continuity fits. Mm-hmm. So when they, you know, they knock on, you know, hopefully in theory, they'll knock on enough doors, the right doors will fit, and it'll just complete the circle.
Right.
And they'll be like, yeah, this is what we kind of wanted it to happen.
The whole time.
Right?
Without all the drama inside of it. But
yeah, even though everyone like kind of knows the drama. But
that's kind of what is bringing attention to it too. Like, not to totally sidetrack, but I think, you know, we do sit down and, like, for us, this is so easy to sit here for 3 hours, honestly, at a time, until we get super hungry or something. It's so easy for us to sit down and just have these conversations, and we do, like, on a daily basis. So it's interesting to kind of like go off on this way and this way, but it's all relevant, and it all kind of loops together into, you know, the making of Supay, and which is virtually, like you always tell me, it's an extension of myself and yourself. And we're just kind of together bringing this, you know, this entity alive and making it what we want it to be. You know, it can be part of mine and how I kind of want it to be accurate, and it can be kind of yours and just how you want it to be too. And I think at the end of the day, looking at both of our perspectives and looking at how we were maybe raised and you know, how we can have these conversations, I think it's really important. And
continue to have these conversations to propel the brand into places that neither of us, you know, thought it would ever go.
Yeah.
And so... yeah, and maybe that's good ending point to this episode.
Yeah,
and stay tuned
to our next rant.
Our next talk, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, or good morning or good night to you. We'll see you next time. Peace.